Today, we are going to be talking about intimidation and feeling threatened. A lot of people are feeling threatened by people within the LGBTQ community and are not admitting it. A lot of people are intimidated with us and not just us queer people. Any person can experience this as long as they are a special person, as long as you have a calling. But when you're in the LGBTQ, it's a little different, especially for someone who is trans or trans feminine, because this is really like a man's world, right? This is a man's world, so things are going to lean towards the man, or things are going to lean towards the favor of men in a lot of cases. But it all depends, because there is lots of misogyny in the world too, lots of it. So there's lots of women who despise or hate on other feminine women, and it really has to do with deep-rooted insecurity. That's all that is. Insecurities. So because they lack self-confidence, they feel threatened, and now they feel they have to defend them. They feel they have to defend themselves from a threat that's non-existent. So you are now delusional. But for someone who is queer, dealing with someone like that who is threatened by you, especially if you lean more into the femme category, then it gets a little dangerous, because in reality, we're in a time where we don't have the same equality as them. Yeah, we're getting a lot of our rights, but we're also getting them stripped from us at the very same time. So it's still discrimination amongst us heavily in workspaces or in any part of our daily lives. We're at the risk for hate crimes, etc. And here's the thing, when you're confident in yourself and who you identify and who you identify as, and they see that, and they see that you're doing so well, and that the labels that they try to pin on you and make your sexuality your entire identity, but we still rise above all that. You know, there's this saying that's going around on social media where people will say, you're gay, black, and disabled, pick a struggle. So people already view anyone in the LGBTQ as someone who automatically has a life struggle. So if they see that you are doing better than them or surpassing them, depending on who they are and whether they're secure with themselves or not, they might resent you because of it. You know, just because you're doing great for yourself and you're blinded by their hate for you, not even knowing all the hard work that you've put in. For example, let me get more into detail. One of my first corporate jobs, I was working as a customer service manager for a meal prep company. Well, it was really like a customer service representative position, but it wasn't, because I didn't work with other individuals. It was a solo position, and I was the only one running the entire department solely. Some of my duties were simple, like responding to all emails and calls and making them as well, but I had other tasks that I was assigned to as well. I was responsible for creating the packaging sheet, creating labels, communicating with the dispatch team, updating the company site, running errands, etc. So upon me working there, immediately after my training was over, but there was another department beside mine, and there were more than several employees in that department being managed by an older Hispanic woman who was possibly in her mid to late 40s. And, I had no idea how much she secretly hated my guts, but I'll explain. So every morning when I'd come in, I would say good morning to everyone, including her, when I'd first see them in the morning. So I'd say the first 2 times she gave me a response, or she gave me a good morning back. If not, then 1 time, maybe, she replied, not even exaggerating it. So that just goes to show you this lady already disliked me for no reason. She already had it made up in her mind that she was going to be shady towards me, and that it was going to be her new work goal to get me fired due to her jealousy and envy towards me. So after a few times of me coming in the office and me looking directly into her face with a smile on mine, saying good morning to her, and for her to just strut past me as if she didn't hear me or see me was so weird. She was definitely intimidated. I was honestly confused, because I had done nothing for her to even not like me to begin with. So after, a couple times of me saying good morning and her doing that, I eventually picked up on her weird energy and I started to mirror her same energy. Thinking back on it now, it could have been everything about me. Me being the strong-minded, naturally feminine person that I am, how attractive I am, how smart I am, the way I carried myself, how confident, how youthful I was, but yet so ambitious and determined I was. These things are very important. These things are very important. They're important overall for everyone, but especially for people within the LGBTQ community because we're constantly criticized 10 times more than the average individual. We have to hold ourselves to that standard. So it's very important to be well groomed, nicely dressed, while also, carrying yourself great and just having self-confidence so that you could exude beauty. So mind you, I was probably like 20, 21 at the time. And, I'm also Black, I'm queer, I'm youthful. So this lady was out to get me. Now, I made a couple mistakes while working on the job, like an error on a packaging sheet or a meal plan, but it was nothing that was too extreme. The good definitely outweighed the bad. The errors were minor. I always did everything in a sufficient amount of time. And if there were any mistakes, I made sure to make the adjustments to correct those errors. So they could not say that I wasn't beneficial to their company. I even got them a gig with ABC Channel 10 News. So because of me communicating back and forth with Channel 10, they were able to get that opportunity. They wouldn't have even gotten that opportunity if it wasn't for me setting that up with ABC. So they were ungrateful and envious. Me living my life being confident with myself irritated their spirit alone. So one day, this lady that managed the cook department, she called me out, swearing up and down that I made a mistake. She was so quick with it too, just ready to try and ruin my day. But after like 5 minutes of her handing me the documents and reviewing them, because she's claiming I made a mistake on the sheet. So there was a sheet that she's claiming that I made a mistake on. And then after me examining the docs again and seeing that there in fact was no mistake made, then I called her out on her own mistake, saying, nope, look, there his name is right there. Because it was basically like it's a packaging sheet that has all the members' names on them for us to create the labels for the meal plans for the week. So she was just trying to look for a reason to try and ruin my day. Stop being so quick to try and embarrass or disturb me, lady. Mind you, she did this right in front of my boss. So she tried checking me in front of him and she got checkmate right back. See, that was her way of trying to prove to my boss that I'm not reliable to work my role. But she failed that time. At least that time, just that time. Because I'll get into that later. So this company had 2 owners, and both of them were middle-aged white men. And the lady that trained me, whose position I took, was also a middle-aged white woman. So there was the lady that was training me. She was leaving the position, and so I was going to fill her role. She was very sweet. She was like I said, she was a white woman, middle-aged. She could have been in her 40s or 50s, but she was very sweet. I liked her a lot, and she trained me, and she actually told me to look out for one of my bosses because she had a beef with one. But the one she told me to look out for, I actually preferred him. It was my other boss, who was my primary boss, who was the issue. And he was very annoying, obnoxious, and he'd actually sexually harass me on the job. So now, as a trans woman in the workspace, there's a lot that you have to deal with, so you better be prepared. You have to have tough skin, but that goes for everywhere as a trans person. It's just better off that you deal with it in a workspace to get your money. Trust me, don't go the crazy extreme routes because you think that things are hard right now. But 9 times out of 10, when you take that route, it'll only get harder depending on one's situation and mindset. It's tough though. It's tough. It's a tough world. It's survival of the fittest. Because if you're not prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it is that you're going to be dealing with, you're going to end up being depleted, and it's going to be very hard to recover. And I'm telling you this as someone with experience to the youth, all youth, but specifically queer youth. Now, this woman would come into the building every day, look at me with hate, roll her eyes, walking past me all day with a nasty spirit, throwing negative energy at me all day. She hated me with a passion. So eventually I was fired from the job. My awareness started kicking in, and I noticed what was going on while working this job the whole time while I was there.